Hey, good morning and welcome to Morning Jen. I'm going to just ask someone in the chat to tell me if they can hear me. I've got AirPods on this morning because I'm returning that terrible, terrible microphone. So I'm guessing you can hear me. We have a big show today, huge show, because today we are breaking down this document. Yes, this beautiful document. This is the what I call not the superseding indictment, but the supercalifragilistic indictment of Donald Trump. And the reason why I am making that Mary Poppins reference is because at the beginning of Mary Poppins, she reaches into that. It's kind of like this gorgeous bag. It's either black or it's like a carpet covered bag, and she reaches in and there is everything in there as she unpacks it. So we're going to do that. We are going to unpack or break this down. And we're also going to cover the breakdown of Donald Trump's campaign and his emotional state. But my friends, before we get to those very hot topics, I want to first make clear that there's this thing that I realize I spend a lot of time on, and I don't ever share it on the show itself. So I'm going to show you. I'm really proud of this thumbnail. Yes, I know that I'm, a legal scholar and kind of a pundit, and I talk a lot, but I also enjoy making thumbnails for the show. So here you see, Indicted Again, and I don't know if you can see. This is really a photo of Donald Trump, a real photo, but I just added those teardrops because yes, he has been indicted again. But before we get to that lovely story, I got a couple things first. I want to do a little contrast between what's going on in the Donald Trump, or I should call it the Trump Vance campaign compared to the Harris Walz campaign. And so, there's not a day that goes by when we don't see JD Vance doing something offensive. And sometimes what we find out is something that's been uncovered from the past, and at other times it's something new. But does it matter? I say not. Let's listen now because this is an audio, and once again, JD Vance is not only insulting women, that's the implication here, but he's acting really weird about the relationship between teachers and children. And he attacks a good friend of mine, Randy Weingarten, who is president of the AFT. I used to just know her just because of the internet and all the good work she does for the teachers unions. And now, as you may know, because I've joined Wayne State University, the law faculty, it's a public university, and I am now a member of the AFT. Anyway, that's a little side thing. Let's listen.
I think our conservative idea is that parents and families should determine what children learn, what values they are brought up with. So many of the leaders of the left, and I hate to be so personal about this, but they're people without kids trying to brainwash the minds of our children. And that really disorients me and it really disturbs me. Randy Weingarten, who's the head of the most powerful teachers union in the country, she doesn't have a single child. If she wants to brainwash and destroy the minds of children, she should have some of her own and leave ours the hell alone.
What? What, JD? So much to unpack there. JD Vance is obsessed with people who don't have children. He's so obsessed with it. And, again, my degree is in law, not in psychology. But, have you noticed, there's this thing that people who go out and condemn the most tend to be kind of obsessed with it and kind of desire it. You sometimes often see sort of extremist members of the various clergies. And I'm not condemning all clergy. I'm talking the most extremists, the ones who get extreme as opposed to supporting human flourishing and love and all the things that I think all religious traditions at their core support. These are the folks who go after GLBTQ people, who are obsessed with men who think gay men should go to hell, and then you find out that they are like really big on Tinder and they've been in gay relationships forever, and you wonder, people bring that out. It's not about condemning them being gay. It's not just about the hypocrisy that I'm talking about here. It's about the sort of projection and the hate. And I just wonder with JD Vance if he is resentful toward people who don't have children because he resents having to become a parent. And I only say this because it just seems like a pattern. He just has this weird, creepy obsession. And I mentioned one little data point, which was he boasts publicly about the fact that when Donald Trump called him to ask him to be his VP, to be on the ticket with him, his son was at the time talking to him about Pokemon. And he boasts publicly that he told his son, could you just shut the hell up? Or he said something like that to the kid on, this is the most important call of my life. Now, first of all, you don't need to say that to your kid. There's other ways to gesture that people need to be quiet, like waving your hand down. And even if you say, no one's perfect as a parent, even if you say that, why are you telling people publicly about that you did that? And I think, as I recall, the photo of him saying that publicly, he was in this big man spread. So at any rate, dude is obsessed when people don't have children. And yet he is boastful about, one, mistreating his own children, and two, not raising his own children, right? When his wife, he talks about when his wife, well, first of all, he referred to his kids as, the other day, my wife has 3 children or something like that, or my wife's children. So there's something else weird there. I don't want to analyze this too much. I also just want to say, one, people should be able to be teachers whether or not they have children. Two, you might not remember back in the day when my mother was a teacher, and this is something Elizabeth Warren has talked about. If you were a teacher, and you were married, or if you were a married teacher, they would let you teach. But if you became pregnant, you could no longer teach. So it seems like, women, are always being, told what's appropriate to signal in a classroom about their bodies. Also, J.D. Vance may forget that some of the best teachers are Jesuits. The Catholic Jesuit schools are incredible. The Jesuits have a long tradition of teaching. Same thing with nuns and so on. So this is absurd. And again, that's what I have to say about that. Now, there's more to say about J.D. Vance. And again, guys, I am here to talk to you about the superseding indictment, but we got some stories to cover first. So I'll get to that. Second thing, J.D. Vance, let's watch this one and we'll comment on the other side.
Look, I think her tone is ridiculous in her speech. There are extremely serious consequences to voting for Donald Trump. I don't think that's persuasive to most Americans, and warning them about voting for the wrong person is just, I think it's ridiculous. Criticize his policies, criticize what I want to do, criticize what Donald Trump wants to do, but this whole, wag your finger and warn you of extremely serious consequences, I feel like she sounds like a vice principal who's criticizing a student and not a vice president who's trying to lead the country. I just don't like the tone.
Couple things. One, wagging finger, that's a very associated with school, this whole school marmy. She's not credible. I have not seen Kamala Harris wag her finger. The number one finger wagger in the Senate, where she was the number one finger wagger in Democratic politics, who's actually he's part of the Democratic coalition, but not registered as a Democrat. You know who finger wagger is. That's Bernie Sanders. That's not Kamala Harris. He's the finger wagger. Nothing wrong with wagging your finger, but let's get the facts straight. Secondly, J.D. Vance, I don't think Kamala Harris' campaign needs to take advice from you about how she should run things. He's saying, just criticize us on our policies. One, okay, we just read a piece by Rich Lowry, remember, on air the other day in the New York Times. And in this piece, in which he said, people win on character. It's a joke because he thinks Donald can, and that it's not on policy. So J.D. Vance, is giving contradictory advice. And then finally, J.D., this whole sort of nothing to see here, like the Leslie Nielsen meme. With things, blowing up behind him. J.D. Vance saying that no one should look in that closet in the hallway right near the basement is telling me that's exactly where people should look. And it's not ridiculous. The word ridiculous means deserving of ridicule, risible, laughable. It's not laughable to warn people of the danger of electing Donald Trump, because that's exactly what makes him unfit for the presidency, J.D. Okay, cool. Now, let's switch over to the campaign that seems to be doing much better. And of course, that is the Harris Walls campaign. And let's start with this, new happening. Let's do this. Let's listen. And it is about how she's getting support, again, from places that you would not expect.
I was to say culture issues as a code word.
Sorry, that is not, that's Steve Bannon. That is not where she's getting respect. Give me a moment.
This morning, more than 200 Republicans who previously worked for former Presidents George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and or former Senators John McCain and Mitt Romney, they signed a letter backing Vice President Harris for president. The list includes former chiefs of staff, press secretaries, campaign managers, interns. There are some interns on the list as well.
Wow. So you heard that. I mean, this is 200 people. And it's not just that people are quietly deciding to support Kamala Harris. This is a groundswell. This is what looks more like a dam breaking. Maybe it's not a dam breaking. Maybe it's a little bit of a shift, but it's far more than what you saw in the past. And I think one of the reasons why Republicans, not just because they have contempt for him and think he's dangerous, are doing this, it's they do want to save the conservative party, which is now the party of Trump. And I think I don't think I'm the first person to say this, right? Because this is what I said in 2020, that if Donald Trump lost, he would be running again in 2024. And my friends, I hate to tell you this. I know where I'm going here. But if and when Donald Trump loses, he's going to run again and again and again and again and again. This man will not give up. And I would even suggest, I know that I may be the first person saying this because it's just coming to the top of my head, that in his will, should he actually care enough about his children to leave something to them, I imagine that as a condition, although I don't know if this is enforceable, I'm not a trust and estates lawyer, but I would imagine it as a condition of his children being able to inherit from him, he would require one of them to run for president. You heard it here first. I know it's fanciful. I'm just saying this man wants to be vindicated, and he will go to his grave and beyond trying to win back the presidency. You heard it here first. So this is why the Republican Party wants to see him, not all of them, the people I'm referring to, they want to see Trumpism crushed. And the only way to crush Trumpism is to have a decisive, embarrassing victory by Harris Walls. Okay. So that's one thing. Now, before I tell you one more thing about the Harris campaign, I do want to play that clip that I brought up a little early. I want to be clear, though. Even though I say it's Trumpism that's the problem, there are other problems in what's going on in terms of deep misogyny in the entire Republican Party. And this goes beyond just abortion rights to all sorts of other ways that women can be part of public life. And I would like to show you this clip because this is a guy talking to Steve Bannon, who is running for U.S. Senate. I'm not going to tell you his name because I don't want to tell people, I don't want to share someone's name that will then be shared. You can Google it if you want. I don't want him to get any kind of attention that would help him get elected. So let's listen.
I was to say culture issues as a code word for rube, white, rural, Christian, heterosexual, male, nationalist, that are just focused on their wives being too mouthy, sir.
Yeah. Well, look, let's just be frank. Women have become too mouthy.
Oh. No. This woman, my friends, the woman you're looking at and the women I know on this show, and also the men, we were born mouthy. Okay? Yeah. So that's that. We haven't become mouthy. We have voices. We are not here like children or like accessories to be seen and not heard. Now, to be clear, that doesn't mean men. That doesn't mean if, regardless, or non-binary people should not be heard. This is about mutuality, conversation, not domination. Anyhow, so that is, again, remember, it's not just Donald Trump. Now let's return to the Harris campaign. And this is one of the things about the Harris campaign is that they're trying to attack her for laughing too hard, for not having a platform, they say, or for when she does have specific policy proposals, such as, building more housing to help the middle class, when she talks about reinstating women's rights to choose. She goes through her various policy positions. And when they say that, when she says that, then we get it's not specific enough, as opposed to what Donald Trump is offering up, which when he gets specific enough is batshit crazy. So I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to talk to you about one of the biggest accusations against the Harris campaign. And then one more thing about, the economy. And I want to remind you, yes, my friends, we will get to the indictment because, guys, I have it all marked up. I won't go line by line, but I can tell you the key points. Okay, so let's listen to the accusation that Kamala Harris, the crime is up, and that is not true at all. And now I'm trying to find, I thought I had this. Sorry, guys. Oh, here we go. Let's listen.
David, about what Donald Trump talks about a lot, which is the rising crime rates. He called DNC host city Chicago a war zone that is worse than Afghanistan. But here's the thing. FBI data shows a clear drop in violent crime since Trump left office.
Oh, did I hear that right? A sharp drop in violent crime since Trump left office. That's interesting. Now, this was on MSNBC, Alex Witt, and she was asking that of David Jolly, former Republican congressman. We need to see more of that. Donald Trump has a habit of just saying whatever he wants to say, regardless of whether it is true. And so, we've heard that from members of his campaign. I don't know if I saw this on the news or a friend of mine told me this, but apparently someone in the Trump administration, it might have been Scaramucci, who was only there for 10 days, but he got some insight. I think it was 10 days, you guys can correct me, that Donald Trump was sent out to give a talk while he was president. And he comes out and they he's being briefed right before they send him out. They say, here are the data points, X%, Y% on this, blah, blah, blah. And he goes out and something was supposed to be 30%. And he said like 80% to make it sound better. And he comes back, off stage and someone said, that statistic wasn't right. It should have been, 30%. He said, oh, I thought 80 sounded better. That is Donald Trump. He says what he thinks sounds better. And on the one hand, that's really manipulative. But on the other hand, it's weird because what he thinks sounds better is not always what you and I would think sounds better. Okay, now I want to tell you this. In addition to Kamala Harris, having gone down during the Biden administration, we've also seen repeatedly that the plan for tariffs, the plan for imposing these tariffs makes no sense. I was going to share with you something else on that, but we've kind of covered that, ad nauseum. So let me do this again before I get to the indictment. Donald Trump, as you may have heard, had an exclusive interview with Dr. Phil. And this interview is quite interesting because you can't really tell whether Dr. Phil is on Donald's side or if Dr. Phil is just on his own side trying to make good television. I will let you be the judge on that. So let's look at this first one here.
We've done an amazing thing there, and that's a much softer issue than it was a little while ago. But, this has been an issue. Abortion's been an issue. Roe v. Wade for 52 years.
Okay. So, So this is Donald Trump saying that it was good that Roe v. Wade was overturned. So anyone who thinks the other day that he to believe when he said that he was going to be the best president for women and reproductive rights, again, he just says what he says when he says it because it thinks it will sound good. Now, I see a question in here from Vanessa. Vanessa, I will get back to you in a right now. Vanessa asked, why was Donald allowed to vote in a primary in Florida if he is a convicted felon. Well, the deal is he's been a jury has found him guilty on 34 counts, but the sentence has not been imposed yet. So therefore, that law does not kick in. Now we've got something else that Donald Trump had to say with Dr. Phil. Let's listen to this.
Milley was a stupid person, very stupid. But we have great generals, but Milley was stupid. Guys like John Kelly are he's one of the dumbest people I've ever met.
Okay. Number one, of course, he's insulting the military. But two, these are people that he appointed. Have you noticed there's this really weird pattern that everyone Donald Trump hires or associates with, he either decides is stupid, or if he doesn't think they're stupid, they end up going to prison, or maybe both. Okay, so that might be something that makes him unfit. It also might make him actually incorrect, right? He's just angry at these people, including Milley and others, because they're actually telling the public how dangerous Donald Trump is and what he actually thinks of the military. And as you know, Donald Trump thinks people in the military are losers and suckers unless he is doing a photo op at Arlington Cemetery, where he should not be, because, as you know, you're not allowed to stage political events at that cemetery, which, of course, brings us to what he did. Here is a screenshot. This was covered all over the news yesterday. Now, this is a photo from a New York Times reporter, not from Donald Trump's campaign, but what happened at Arlington Cemetery, according to news reports, is that he was going there yesterday to commemorate the withdrawal from Afghanistan, where several people were killed. And it was messy, not because of Joe Biden, which is what Donald Trump is saying, and not because of Kamala Harris. But if you read anything about this, you will know, and I think some of this is coming out from the Harris campaign, that it was Donald Trump who set that date for withdrawal. And it was Donald Trump who had all the different air bases, so the places planes could fly out, shut down but one. And it was Donald Trump who met with the Taliban. And it was Donald Trump, on and on and on, who set the stage for what was this disastrous withdrawal. I'm not going to say that, the Biden administration has no responsibility for how that played out, but the vast majority of blame lays at Donald's feet. And then here he is trying to make a photo opportunity of this. What happened is when he was there, and I'm reading this right here from the Times, this is covered also by NPR and all many other news outlets, that the military cemetery said in a statement that federal law prohibits political campaigning on the grounds, and that there was an incident and a report filed. And as I'm sure you've heard, the incident is allegedly they were asked to, the camera person, I believe, if someone else was asked to leave or not to film, and they apparently laid hands on, shoved one of the staff at the cemetery, and also shouted at them. So we will find out more about that soon. Okay, now I think I've got most of, I've got one more thing from Dr. Phil before we dig into this, the indictment. Okay, so let's listen to this. This is almost worthy of Crazy Town, but I got something else for you for that.
They demonize you a lot. They make a big deal out of the fact that you said you're only going to have to vote one time.
Yeah.
You, like me, you're only going to have to vote one time ever, or whatever your quote was.
You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
You know why that was? It said, and with a smile, Christians, for whatever reason, don't vote very much, proportionately. NRA people and people that feel very strongly about the Second Amendment, they're not voters. I don't know why. Maybe it's a rebellious streak. And I said to the Christians, we got to win this election. If we win this election, I'll straighten everything out in less than 4 years by a lot. Then you don't have to, it doesn't matter. In other words, I'm saying you don't have to vote. Doesn't mean we're not going to have elections. You're going to have elections, but you have to vote this time because we have to win. This is the most important.
Okay, people. Now, you might just listen to that and say, as I'm seeing, oh gosh, it makes me nauseous, or as a Christian, I resent him saying that. And then I also see Kate Clark saying, wow, Christians do vote. Well, I don't take anything at face value. I mean, that can be a little bit annoying to be around me, but I tend to question things. I've learned to not always question things out loud because I don't like when I'm questioned all the time. It's a little bit annoying. So I just do my own research. And I know that's gotten a pejorative, that's pejorative now, but Donald Trump said, the reason why I said Christians needed to vote, because they don't. I just want them to turn out and they won't need to vote again. That's not at all what he meant. It's not true. And even his explanation makes no sense. Why would it be if they get everything straightened out? Would you not need to have elections? He's suddenly thinking everyone's going to want to vote for him. That doesn't make any sense at all in American political history. And that's not what he means. He was hinting at the fact of dictatorship. Now, but let's just look at this empirical question. Do Christians vote less than non-Christians? Oh, let's take a look. Look at this. Okay, this is from a academic study dating back to 2015, looking at the empirical question based on actual, numerical data. And the question posed, and this is actually, it was purple. I did not do this purple background. This was something, you can find it up online. It was like a kind of presentation that someone did of their research. And it was presented by Chad Huckabee, and his faculty sponsor was Dr. Lee W. Payne. And it says, and I did not go beyond this to look into their CVs and to see if anyone had any issues after this, I'm just doing this for our news show. You can dig deeper. But here was the headline. Voter turnout in America. Are Christians more likely to vote? And here is the money shot. Measuring both voting and identification as a Christian, I hypothesize that Christians would be more likely to vote than non-Christians. Based on the result, I was able to reject the null hypothesis. That's the alternative hypothesis. I know some of you do empirical work. So he rejects the idea that being a Christian had no effect on whether an individual votes. And based on my research, Christians are much more likely to vote than non-Christians. Okay, so no, that's not true. And this is data dating back to, this was research from 2015. Donald Trump first got elected in 2016. He relied heavily on the evangelical vote. That it's not true based on at least this limited study. Now, I just saw someone saying that Morning Jen should be 1 hour. Sometimes it comes in around a half hour, 40 minutes. Today it might be a bit longer because now we are about to launch in, my friends, to what you have all been waiting for, the superseding supercalifragilistic indictment. Okay, so I can't decide whether I should keep that thumbnail up there while I'm doing this because it's a more interesting visual or just do this for you. And I think I'm just going to do this and talk to you about the indictment. So I think the best way, some of you joined us when we did an Emergency Nerds last night, and so you may have heard a little bit about this. But let me give you the basics. And the way I'm going to frame this is, what is this indictment? Why is it called superseding, first of all? Secondly, how does it differ? Let me say back up. What is this indictment? What is it? Why is it called superseding? 2, how does it impact the case against Donald Trump that we're talking about? And 3, what are any other implications by what was done here by Jack Smith? And then finally, let's compare some of the major differences between the previous indictment and this one. Okay, so here's the deal. This is called a superseding indictment. It was filed by Jack Smith yesterday, and it's superseding because there was a previous indictment filed August of 2023, last year, in the very same case against Donald Trump. And the one we have here fully replaces the previous one, like it does not exist anymore. That's number one. So what is this case? This is a case, the federal criminal case, that Special Counsel Jack Smith filed filed against Donald Trump related to the interference in the election of 2020. And you might say, why did it take Jack Smith so long to file this case? Well, it actually didn't. Jack Smith was only hired, or I should say appointed, by Merrick Garland in November of 2022, and the indictment came down in August of 2023. Okay, so that's the good news. The bad news is he should have been appointed when Merrick Garland took office in March of 2021, but you've heard me talk about that. So this indictment is, the significance of this is as follows. This is an entirely new grand jury. So they did not go back to the people that had assembled last summer and say, hey guys, come back. No, there was a new grand jury that heard all of the evidence and decided to indict Donald Trump again on 4 counts. So what this means, practically speaking, is that Donald Trump has now been indicted by juries. What are we at now? Is this the 5th time, right? Because he was indicted in New York by a jury in Manhattan, right? And that's a case, I'm sorry, by a grand jury in Manhattan. That case already went to trial, and the actual petite, the jury, the 12-member jury found him guilty on 34 counts. That's happened. We know he was also indicted in Fulton County, Georgia, and that case moves forward. He was also indicted in Florida in the documents case. And right now we have 2 different juries who have found probable cause that he committed these crimes. Okay, so yes, so that is significant. There's never been a jury, there has never been, let me say the words correctly, a grand jury that we know of that has rejected these claims against him. And more importantly, a U.S. president has never been indicted before. Now Donald Trump has been indicted 5 times. So that's significant in and of itself to show that he is unfit to serve. The second reason why this is significant is that Jack Smith is being mindful, and to say, I can't help but saying very mindful and very demure with this, in that he works very carefully in this new superseding indictment to strip out of the indictment anything that the U.S. Supreme Court would see as a red flag or even a yellow flag. And let me just be clear. Remember, this case involving against Donald Trump, the one that he was indicted for last August, and he was supposed to go to trial this past spring, but got put off. It got put on hold. This is in front of Judge Chutkan in D.C. It got put on hold because of the case going up to the U.S. Supreme Court, where Donald Trump's lawyer argued that he was completely immune. And what the Supreme Court said, which was new, to remind you, is they created a much more expansive category of activity for which a president is either explicitly immune or, they're just outright per se immune from prosecution, even if they violate a federal law. Per se, just you cannot charge them. You cannot, it will just be thrown out. And then there's another category when the president, when they were in office, they were acting in their official duties. And for that, there's a established presumption that they are immune, which is very hard to overcome. So the only activity that Jack Smith can feel safe, and any of us can feel safe that a president can be indicted for, is unofficial acts. So what you see in this indictment is Jack Smith not wanting to F this up. He wants to get this right. Instead of saying to Judge Chutkan, because she said, let's figure out how we're going forward in this case, he said, I'm not going to respond to that. I'm not in a hurry. Instead of trying to move forward on the original indictment, Jack Smith went to a grand jury, had them re-indict the case, and then based on only facts that could be in evidence and only actions that would be in the category of unofficial acts as far as he believes. So that is significant. The goal here is that this case will actually be able to go to court one day. Now, what is also significant? There is no way in hell that this case will go to trial before the election. Period. Do not wait for it. Okay? Now, let me explain why. And it has nothing to do with any kind of guidelines about the Justice Department not initiating cases. This case, within a certain window of the election. This case was just reinitiated, right? This is not within the window. The reason why is this. This indictment, right here, even though I said it was carefully crafted to pass muster with the Supreme Court, a defendant always has the right to challenge the indictment, right? They can go into court to make a motion to dismiss or take the action in federal court. Let me just say this in lay person's words, like Donald Trump's lawyers will go in and try to get the charges dismissed. This is pretty normal. And you can read lots of instances of cases, like a lot of case law on that I teach when it comes to white collar crime are decisions by judges saying, yeah, we agree with the defendant. This indictment should be dismissed because the prosecutor got the law wrong. Or we reject the motion to dismiss. You can move forward with the case. This is pretty common. So what I expect is going to happen next is Donald Trump is going to try to get these dismissed. And sort of we're going to go all the way back up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we'll see what we are left with. That's going to take a while, guys. And hopefully he is not doesn't become president, because hopefully this can continue throughout the next year. This case will go on and on, just like that song from the Titanic that Donald Trump is not permitted to actually use, that people object to. There's that, but also why choose a song from a Titanic movie about a sinking ship for your campaign? Okay, you get the idea. So now I've talked to you about some of the implications. Now I want to zero in on one more implication here. And then we'll talk about examples of what was stripped out and what was added. And I won't spend a lot of time on that, but it's interesting, and I'll explain how I went about this. Now, okay, one of the implications here is in the process of stripping out anything that would fall within what the Supreme Court would say is, at its heart, just per se immune, or even on the periphery that would be presumably immune because it's within the president's, his official acts. What is painful when you look at the pieces taken out here, for example, is that you can see a blueprint. I'm now flipping to this. You can see a blueprint for activities that unscrupulous presidents would take that we now believe, based on removing them here, that these are now within the realm of what a president who the Supreme Court is now treating as above the law could do. And I want to flip here because the number one thing, and this is where page after page after page of this, the biggest portion of this comes up, and I've got this, I've got this highlighted, what I did, just to make clear how I did this. Because this isn't a Word document where I could compare, and because normally you can compare PDFs, but the new superseding indictment was kind of an image, and it wasn't PDF text, and I couldn't do that. What I did is I went to the old document. Well, I started with a new document, and I read them side by side. In the old document, anything that had been taken out, I highlighted. And with the new document, anything that had been added, I highlighted. Okay, so that's how I know this. And what I find the most disturbing that was removed is this. And so this is on my screen right now, and I'm looking and reading this for you. It's a part where the old indictment talked about Donald Trump and his then 6 co-conspirators. And I'm going to read this part. Attempted to use the power and authority of the Justice Department to conduct sham election crime investigations and to send a letter to the targeted states that falsely claimed that the Justice Department had identified significant concerns, and so on. And this was about the fraudulent elector plan, right? The fake electors in states that had gone for Biden, pretending, assembling and saying that our votes matter and we should be the ones that get certified. This is using the Department of Justice to falsely present these fraudulent electors as a valid alternative. Okay, why does that scare me? It scares me because basically what we now have is the belief, based on the Supreme Court, that a president can weaponize its own Department of Justice to engage and facilitate and conspire to commit crimes, including attempting a coup. And of course, we've already heard the scary thing from the dissent in this case and from oral argument in this immunity case that now a president could use special forces teams to assassinate his rival. I didn't say this. This is now what is the law. So again, reading this indictment brought to mind how far we have fallen because of this U.S. Supreme Court that Donald Trump installed because he was able to put in so many justices because he cheated in the election. There's some circularity there. Okay, guys. So a couple last things. What's brilliant about this superseding indictment that Jack Smith added, and let me just put this up because I love this thumbnail. Yes, he was indicted again, and he is sad. So what Jack Smith added here is very carefully identifying that the 5 of the 6 co-conspirators who are still left in, because he pulled out Jeffrey Clark, who was part of the Department of Justice, that these are attorneys. And what you see, they make very, very clear in describing these co-defendants, and you can see a lot of yellow right here on this page. Before it just said co-conspirator 1, a private attorney who was willing to spread knowledge and false claims. Now Jack Smith wanted to make explicitly clear that Donald Trump was acting as a candidate for re-election, right? Not as a sitting president. So when Jack Smith when this describes co-conspirator 1 as a private attorney whom the defendant put in charge of his campaign litigation efforts. Okay, every single other co-conspirator, the word private was added in front of the word attorney. And of course, Jeffrey Clark was removed because he was in an official role in the Department of Justice. What's also new, and this is sort of on the front page, is at the very beginning of the indictment, Donald Trump was described as a former president or and that was stripped out of the first paragraph. And what was added, so what was said before, that defendant Donald J. Trump was the 45th president, right? That was taken out. It is irrelevant that he was president. Instead, what it says now is the defendant Donald J. Trump was a candidate for president of the United States in 2020. In a later paragraph, it says, and this was still the same, but I'm going to do the added addition, despite having lost, the defendant, and this is new, who was also the incumbent president, right? And then throughout, you see the defendant, instead of saying he repeatedly and widely disseminated false information, he said used his campaign to do this. Also language as a candidate and a citizen. And so you see throughout the document, where appropriate, Jack Smith clarifies that Donald Trump was a candidate for re-election at that time, right? And we're talking about re-election in the 2020 campaign, right? Even though he happened to be the incumbent president, what he was doing at the time he was trying to so-called stop the steal was in his capacity as candidate. What's also fascinating here is that even though any mention of the Department of Justice and how he used those officials was taken out, what was left in was his conversations with Mike Pence. Now, Mike Pence was the vice president. However, he wasn't just happened to be the incumbent vice president, but at that time, he was also, he was also part of the ticket at that time for re-election. Yes, I know it's hard to believe, but when Donald Trump tried to get elected in 2020, he was not yet ready to kill Mike Pence, or dump him off the ticket. Or I should say, have his followers do that. They were actually on the reelection ticket together. And so, what's wonderful here is you still have that in this indictment. Other things that happen is we have a lot of information, a lot of facts stripped out, paragraphs stripped out on the day of the insurrection. And this will actually, I find this fascinating. This will actually help the prosecution and hurt Donald Trump. So, you know how when people were urging Donald Trump as president to try to restore the peace, all that was taken out. So Donald Trump at his trial won't be able to introduce evidence that suggests that, look, I told people to act peacefully. Nothing about anything he was asked to do in his capacity as president will be able to come in. So that won't help him. And so those things come out. At any rate, the other thing to say is that on January 6th, when he was the ellipse, the indictment calls that a campaign speech. So again, I'm going to give you my bottom line from scouring and comparing the documents. There are good things in here for Jack Smith, namely the fact that Donald Trump won't be able to introduce in evidence anything he did in his capacity as president. To even when he was delaying and he's claim, when people were calling on him to act to stop this. On the one hand, that hurts Donald because he wouldn't be able to say, look, I tried. On the other hand, it hurts Jack Smith that he can't bring that up. On balance, I think that's okay. And then the other piece is it's disappointing that because of the Supreme Court, we now believe that a president can weaponize the Department of Justice. Okay, that's what I got for you. I hope that was helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions on YouTube or in the chat about that. But guys, where we are right now it is time right now, guys, for Crazy Town. Crazy Town, my friends, is coming from the Dr. Phil interview. And let me play it, and then we'll talk about it, because it is really worthy of the label.
California, I gave a speech. I had a crowd so big. I said, "There's no way I could lose California," but automatically they mark it down if you're a Republican as a loss.
What?
You lose by 5 million votes. I said, 5 million votes. I guarantee. If Jesus came down and was the vote counter, I would win California. Okay.
Wait. Stop. I'm going to play that again. Wait, what? First of all, what the fuck? Who in their right mind thinks that a Republican candidate would win California? And now he's actually saying that it's all a lie, that they just mark it down. They just say that you lost. Right? That's how he operates, right? He goes in and tries to tell people just mark it down a certain way. Let's say I won. No, that's not how it works. And no, let me just play this again in case you were making coffee or you walked away from your phone or whatever. I'm just going to play that again so you can hear the part about Jesus, because Jesus, as a historical figure, because of course, even though I'm Jewish and I'm not a Christian, I do believe that Jesus existed, and Jews think of him as a prophet. I think Muslims do too, and people who are non-believers probably believe that he existed. And I know he was a carpenter. I had not heard that he was a vote counter. I have heard that you're supposed to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. I have not heard Jesus, the vote counter. But let's listen.
California, I gave a speech. I had a crowd so big. I said, "There's no way I could lose California," but automatically they mark it down if you're a Republican as a loss.
I don't.
That you lose by 5 million votes. I said, 5 million votes. I guarantee. If Jesus came down and was the vote counter, I would win California. Okay. In other words, if we had an
let me just add the solipsism, the narcissism. If Jesus came down from heaven, I don't think the first thing on his list, Donald Trump, would be to sign up to be a vote counter in California. I think there are hundreds of millions, if not billions of people suffering from poverty and disease. I I'm pretty sure that he would take care of every single one of those people and wash every poor person's feet in the world. And if he had time, he might hang out at a Starbucks. But I do not think he would sign up to be a vote counter who is going to fraudulently hand the election to you. But I could be wrong. Let's continue.
Honest vote counter, a really honest vote counter. I do great with the Hispanics, great. I mean, at a level that no Republican's ever done. But if we had an honest vote counter, I would win California.
You think so?
Oh, I think so. I do.
Dr. Phil.
I go around California.
You think so?
They have Trump signs all over the place. It's a very dishonest. Everything is mail-in. They send out 38 million ballots. I think it is around 36, 38 million ballots. They send them.
Friends, he is melting down. So I promised you, I know that was crazy town, but let's just take a look at what is actually going on for Donald. I'm going to look at this and then we will leave. He is tweeting, he's putting up his Truth Socials like crazy. He's ranting about Jack Smith. He is talking about this is a dead witch hunt. No, he did not resurrect this case. He's getting confused. The Florida case he's trying to revive in the 11th Circuit. This case was not dead. This case is on the docket. He just added a superseding indictment. So he can't, in fairness, he's been indicted so many times he can't keep the cases straight. But this is the part that's insane. He said that his attorneys told him that you're not allowed to bring cases literally before the election. Okay. Yeah, no, Donald. I think the real thing here is that you need to cry more, Donald. It's sad, but you have been indicted again. There's nothing unlawful about this, and you are crazy. I will see you guys tomorrow morning again with a little crazy town. And always a good show. So thank you for being here. Thank you to my moderators. And I will again see you tomorrow. Remember, if you like the show, please subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified when we are back.